the heart of this nation, under skies so blue,
there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true.
from the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe.
Welcome to today's discussion. We'll be examining a recent legal battle between the Trump administration and a judge over the deportation of an MS-13 gang member. The administration's response has been described as brutally honest. What makes this case so unusual?
The unusual aspect is the direct and forceful challenge by the Trump administration to the judge's authority. The judge ordered the return of a deported individual, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, an MS-13 member, from El Salvador to the U.S. The administration's response essentially argues that the judge lacks the jurisdiction to issue such an order, highlighting the limitations of U.S. authority over another sovereign nation's judicial system.
So the core of the administration's argument is a jurisdictional challenge. What are the legal grounds for this?
Yes, the administration contends that because Garcia is in El Salvador, under the control of the El Salvadoran government, the U.S. has no power to compel his return. They draw parallels to absurd scenarios like ordering the end of the war in Ukraine to illustrate the pointlessness of the judge's order. Furthermore, they cite a specific statute, Section 1252, which limits the jurisdiction of district courts to review deportation decisions.
The article mentions that Garcia had a previous order suspending his deportation. Does that impact the administration's argument?
The administration argues that even with a previous suspension, the underlying deportation order remains valid. They cite Supreme Court precedent to support the distinction between removal and withholding orders, emphasizing that a withholding order doesn't invalidate the removal order. Therefore, the judge's intervention is seen as an overreach, regardless of prior rulings.
The article suggests the judge's actions were politically motivated. Is there evidence to support this claim?
The article implies a political motivation, suggesting the judge prioritized her political stance over legal considerations. However, this is presented as an opinion rather than a definitive legal finding. The administration's focus remains on the legal arguments regarding jurisdiction and the validity of the deportation order.
The administration's response is described as brutally honest. What is the tone and style of their legal brief?
The brief is characterized by its directness and forceful rejection of the judge's order. It uses strong language, directly challenging the judge's authority and the legal basis of her decision. This assertive tone is unusual in legal briefs, but reflects the administration's firm stance on the matter.
What are the potential implications of this case beyond the immediate outcome for Garcia?
This case has broader implications for the balance of power between the executive and judicial branches regarding immigration enforcement. It raises questions about the limits of judicial review in matters of national security and foreign relations, particularly concerning the deportation of individuals deemed dangerous. The outcome will likely influence future legal challenges to deportation orders.
The article mentions the public interest. How does the administration address this aspect?
The administration argues that the public interest lies in preventing the return of dangerous individuals like Garcia, an MS-13 member, to the U.S. They counter the argument that there's a public interest in preventing wrongful deportations by emphasizing the greater danger posed by allowing known gang members to re-enter the country.
The article highlights the administration's argument that Garcia's claim of potential torture in El Salvador is weak. What's the basis for this?
The administration points to the executive branch's assertion that no such danger exists, citing official statements and reports. They also emphasize El Salvador's commitment to international conventions against torture, suggesting that the U.S. has taken steps to ensure Garcia's safety. They argue that the courts shouldn't second-guess the executive branch's assessment of the risk.
The case is headed to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. What are the likely outcomes?
The Fourth Circuit will likely review the jurisdictional arguments and the validity of the deportation order. If the Fourth Circuit upholds the administration's position, it would set a significant precedent, limiting the ability of courts to intervene in deportation cases where the individual is outside U.S. jurisdiction. A reversal, however, could embolden future challenges to deportation orders.
The article concludes with a call to action, urging readers to support Red State. How does this relate to the legal case itself?
The call to action is a separate element, aiming to garner support for the publication's coverage of this and similar political and legal battles. It leverages the controversy surrounding the case to encourage subscriptions and engagement with the platform.
The author of the article, Strife, is described as a former infantry officer and amateur historian. Does this background influence the article's perspective?
While Strife's background might contribute to a certain perspective, the article primarily focuses on the legal arguments and factual details of the case. The author's background is presented as additional context but doesn't appear to significantly shape the core analysis of the legal issues.
The article mentions President Trump's power to manage the executive branch. How does this relate to the core legal dispute?
The reference to President Trump's power highlights the broader political context of the case. The administration's defense of its actions is framed as a defense of executive authority in immigration enforcement. This underscores the political stakes involved beyond the purely legal aspects of the dispute.
This has been a fascinating discussion on a complex legal case with significant political implications. Thank you.
In the heart of this nation, under skies so blue, there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true. From the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family.